we're starting up, man. I mean,
Yeah.
that other
Oh
sport
boy.
is finished. Pitchers and catchers are
Oh,
reporting this week.
finally.
Um, we
Finally.
are in it now, people. We are in baseball season. We
Yeah.
were before. It was always baseball season, but now it's baseball season for everybody.
Yep.
And hopefully you've been listening to our shows and you have a little bit of a leg up on some of those people just tuning in, but we're going to give you even more of a leg up as we continue to go through your top one. Let's talk top 100. We're going to start with the top 5. And are you ready to dive in right now?
I am. And it's Tarik Skubal, guys. There you go.
Mhm.
It's Tarik Skubal.
That's a shock. That is a shock.
I had it. It's funny. I did my write up on. You guys understand how I'm going through all these pictures, right? I'm actually going team by team first, and not really doing the ranking first. And then as I do the team, then I kind of say, well, I like this guy more than that guy, one by one, and I go through it all. However, I'm not done with all the teams, which means I'm not done with every pitcher inside the top 25, top 50. So I had to write a lot of these this morning before this podcast out of order. And I found myself doing Tarik Skubal and not loving it as much as I wanted. I know that sounds so weird, but Tarik Skubal, I think, has an amazing changeup against right-handers. That's great. The slider and the sinker are strange to me against lefties. He doesn't pinpoint them as well as I would hope that he would. And the slider, at times, he puts it where he's supposed to with 2 strikes. Not 2 strikes. It's very much hung up in the zone. However, their ICRs on both were exceptional. 18% on the sinker to lefties for Tarik Skubal, and then the slider was like 22% against lefties.
Yeah.
I think that's going to regress. I don't think that's going to stick around. So that's going to be a major thing I'm going to focus on for Tarik Skubal during the season. Sinkers inside, hopefully the lefties actually getting it there instead of somewhat sneaking over the plate. Actually really good against righties. He did front hip sinkers to them with 2 strikes, and it worked too because he needed to do that. Duh. But and then the slider, of course, needs to be a little bit more consistent going down and away and not really hanging in the zone. But the 4-seamer does really, really well against right-handers. And then the changeup underneath that is so good. He's an all-around just, he's going to go 6 innings every time. You're going to get good ratios with a 30% strikeout rate around there. The Tigers are going to win enough games. Like, I'm looking at this saying, okay, who is the total package and the most secure one of that? And it's Tarik Skubal, so he's SP1.
Yep, I agree with you. He is my SP1, and I could tell you I can't see any scenario where I'm drafting him. I just think that's like a little bit of the nature of where we're at right now is, I'm currently in a draft. I know draft and hold formats are different, but I'm currently in an NFBC slow draft and hold. I've completed 5 picks. I've completed 5 rounds. I have not drafted a starting pitcher yet. And there's a good chance that when it comes back to me in the 6th round, I'm going to get somebody that I like. There are a lot of starting pitchers still on the board that, like, sure, maybe it's a, Dylan Cease, Aaron Nola type of starting pitcher 1, but like, I don't know that those guys are so much worse than the guys you're going to put in the top 5, that if you're going to get that player 5 rounds later and you can load up on hitters, you're freaking out. I love Skubal. I'm not wasting. I don't want to say wasting. I'm not using a 1st-round pick on him. And maybe it'll come back and bite me, but this is not where I'm at right now. I know you're in the same boat because we've talked about it a lot.
Yeah. So what's interesting too is that if you guys don't know this, if you have PL Pro, you have so many apps that we've made. Kyle made this great one, the NFBC ADP chart, which is the trends. But it also, what I just requested is for him to have it positioned out. So instead of that Google sheet that I gave you guys, well, we've also got this inside of an app where the ADP rank is just there. So you can just change position and SP, which takes out relievers, and you'll see all of the starting pitchers in order. Yeah. So you've got Skenes still has 1 over Tarik Skubal. And my number 3 is also, actually my number 2 is the 5th off the board. And that is Garret Crochet.
Yes. This is your hot take. Your bold
is
take.
It though?
Well, it is only in the sense, I think first of all, we'll talk about some other criticisms later. I think most people have settled on Crochet, at least in the top 10, most people in the top 5. But I think right now, I would say the vast majority of people believe Skenes and Skubal are 1 and 2. And so I believe it's a little bit of a mini hot take to suggest that Skenes is not in the top 2. And you won't have to wait a long time to hear where Nick's going to talk about Skenes. But yeah, Crochet has leapfrogged him right now.
I mean, Crochet just has, I'll put it this way. What you want out of your best starter in the majors is you have a fastball that guys just can't hit. And he throws for strikes and guys just struggle with it. Its striker is 60%. It's 98th percentile. And I'm going to tell you right now, striker is easily the best indication, just instantly like, oh, cool. Yeah, it gets strikes and it doesn't allow hard contact. Sweet. Things are great. And also, he has a 99th percentile swing striker, which wasn't even in consideration with striker. Like, it's just such a good fastball from Garret Crochet. He pounds those zone with that. And the second thing that you want your stud starter to have is a secondary pitch that he also throws for strikes and gets whiffs with. And he does that incessantly. And that's also his cutter, which is pretty much the same thing. 70% strike rate with a 19% swing strike rate. Slightly higher ICR, so the striker isn't as good. But dang, it's just, that's the kind of guy you want. It's why Garret Crochet has a 5% walk rate. And he's going to have a low hit rate too. He's going to get more wins because it's the Red Sox. He's going to be able to go 6 innings properly finally. And they just set him up. The White Sox did everything you could ever wish for from a team to allow a guy to be extended to go every 5 days at 6 innings now after going 145. Last year, he pitched the entire year, 32 starts, but they were limited at the end. So they won't be limited this year. It's such a, I don't know, clear cut. Yes, here is the dude. Go get him with Crochet. And the knock against Skenes and why Skenes isn't here instead is because his fastball doesn't miss bats. It's shocking. I know this guy that throws a hundo, like you would think, oh man, they're going to miss this every time. No, it is a fastball that has horizontal movement. And with Garret Crochet, the extension is what makes him so difficult. Where it's 97 miles per hour and it comes with 7.1 feet of extension. You're going to see a lot of guys inside of my top 20 with elite extension at 7 feet or so. By the way, did you know that Pablo Lopez is 7.2 feet of extension? I didn't. I totally forgot that point, but that's why his fastball gets a lot of swing and miss potential, right? And with Garret Crochet, it's just like incessant, done. Fastball, cutter, you can't hit it, doesn't matter, Oh, I also have a sinker now that I'm working on. Great, cool. It's just easier. It's simple. It requires less out of Crochet to have a successful start in a given day than Skenes, who has to have his splinker working, which was, I think, the big shock for me is because we were talking about this 4-seamer being, well, hold on, it might not get as many whiffs, and it didn't, but the splinker showed up, and that's really 94 mile per hour. Think of it just like as the cutter, where it's the same velocity. Sorry, it's like it looks the same, but then it's just lower velocity with movement. And I get a feeling that Skenes is going to have a little more variance in that splinker in the year ahead. I think Skenes also should be using his 4-seamer more as a sinker in the sense of going inside to right-handers. What he did last year to lower the whiff rate is so interesting. He's throwing it away to right-handers a bit. And what that does, and to lefties as well, and what it does, it means that when they're late on it, the ball is moving away from the handle toward the barrel, as opposed to, and if you get too far away from it to left-handers or to right-handers, I guess then you'll be going from the barrel to the end of the bat, but not really how Skenes was using it. So I think that shift needs to happen with Skenes. I trust Garret Crochet's command more. I think it's going to be a little bit easier for him to consistently find strikes. And also with Skenes, he doesn't have a great breaking ball. I'm shocked about this. So I look, PLV has the projections of Paul Skenes at like 26% K rate or so, which is weird, right? We all were like, no, this is a 35% strikeout guy. It makes sense for Skenes.
28.1%.
It makes sense because it's not a fastball that gets a 17% swing strike rate.
Yeah. To your point, the PLV projections I have pulled up, Skenes 28.1% strikeout rate, but Crochet 30.8% strikeout rate. So that's almost a 3% better strikeout rate predicted from Crochet to Skenes. Crochet predicted for a 3.10 ERA and Skenes 3.04. Their Crochet projected for a better whip.
Definitely, because the
So
walk rate should be lower as
right.
well. And I also the tiebreaker, if
Crochet
you
and a
want
better
one.
team, so probably
Yeah,
more
exactly,
wins.
wins. Exactly.
I
So,
I can see it. I see
yeah,
that. I know that people push back because like Crochet was a reliever. He only has 1 year as a starter. Can he get extended? Whatever. I think there are similar questions with Skenes, right? Only 1 year as an MLB starter. How does he
is
adapt? Like
is it
things
the
like that.
Spencer Strider injury thing, right?
Right. And we again, I mentioned a lot of people push back on Crochet's second half. You and I have talked about it ad nauseum and how people
Oh,
need
yeah.
to ignore it. I'll just mention that again. I still have Skenes ahead of Crochet in my rankings, but I understand everything that you're saying. I get it. It makes total sense to me. Um, and I think when you and I did that episode where we made like our own pitcher leaderboard and we used the percentile finishes for pitchers in terms of their swinging strike rate, their PLV, and their striker. And Crochet was the only pitcher in all of baseball to finish top 10th percentile in the league and starting pitchers in all three of those categories.
He's so
And
good.
that just speaks to that upside. Um,
He's just
and
amazing.
so, yeah, I get it. I buy it. I'm in on it. I'm in on both of these guys. Crochet obviously more likely to get draft shares of since he's currently going fifth. So rounding out your top five are two. We'll call them both veterans, dependable, solid veterans, guys you have no issue taking inside of the top five. I don't know if you want to talk about them together or or
I'll
differentiate
talk
them in
about them
some way.
separate a little bit.
Okay.
So the first one is Zack Wheeler, and man, I love Zack Wheeler. He's so interesting. It's an extension guy. Again, what do you know? He takes advantage of it with a four seamer at the top of the zone with a sinker that goes into right-handers. This is something I've been talking about for ages with Zack Wheeler. His O swing on his sinker is you just don't see this consistency. It's either it was actually at its lowest I've seen in the last 5 years at 41%. That's that's amazing because it was 50% in previous years. Or 43, 47 doesn't matter. An O swing on the sinker means you're getting inside to your same-handed batted opponent, and it's so good. It just gets so many outs. 27% ICR. It only has one season above a 30% ICR. Now it's 30.4, which is crazy for a pitch you throw as often as he does.
Right.
Now, it's also the same amount of usage for the four-seamer and the sinker against right-handers. That's the whole game plan, is you throw the four-seamer upstairs and you utilize 8 inches of different movement, both vertically and horizontally with the sinker. Guys don't know what it is. It comes in too hard at 94, 95, 96. And with this extension, that they can't figure out which is which. So the four-seamer gets whiffs, sinker gets outs. It's that easy. There's also a sweeper in there for Zack Wheeler. That's good. It's a good mix-up pitch. He gets in there for a CSW 28%, but also a 22% ICR with fair number of strikes, 61%. All good. They can hit it in play effectively. He gets a lot of strikes with it. There you go. Righties are done. Lefties, hi. Lefties have always been the weird thing for Zack Wheeler. He's gone through like 7 pitches to try and figure out what to do with them. Sometimes it's a cutter or a curveball. He's got the sweeper. Maybe it's an actual traditional slider, a traditional changeup. He's now trying splitters a bit more, and I don't really love any of it. The four-seamer is still very effective, and that's really good to hear because the four-seamer can just pump in there. It's like, this is what I'm going to do. It's all going to be okay. 41% ICR, yeah, but 13% swing strike rate, 68% strike rate. You have, so you have whiffs, you have some outs. Hopefully there's something to help. And he does have the sweeper for called strikes. It's the only knock I have against Zack Wheeler, that there really isn't this amazing approach against lefties. It is weird to see a 65% strike rate on that sweeper, but it's only 4% usage. It's really cutters getting in there a bit, but low strike rate under 60%, but good ICR. Honestly, if Zack Wheeler had a very definitive way to get out lefties, like if he had that changeup that we just would love, the splitter is only 11% usage, really more of a surprise pitch, then he would be SP1. The fact he doesn't, he's still trying to tinker and figure that out. Fine. You're not SP1 here. You're just going to settle for SP4 as someone who's going to be above a 25% strikeout rate. You're going to go every 5 days. You're going to be good ratios and wins. And really, it's just, I took Wheeler at this point with the next guy, because I feel as if they're the last two that could just be this 4 category stud. They don't save
They
games
don't
too.
save games. Yeah.
But I mean, I want to say 5 in the sense of that they are expressed over more innings with volume. There's a difference of a guy who goes 5 innings with this stuff and then 6, because you get 20% more production of that ERA and WHIP, right?
Which is just to before you talk about that next guy, I just think Wheeler is a really nice lesson for all of us, that when we have young pitchers who are deemed injury prone, and that they're unable to, they don't have the kind of durability to throw lots of innings, that doesn't mean that they will always be that. Sometimes pitchers can, right? Sometimes you got soft tissue injuries, you've got mechanical things, you've got guys like Glass now who are 6'8", and it's just like hard to get the body working together, and so that could lead to consistent injuries. But the Mets worried that Wheeler would not be consistently healthy, right? Wheeler missed multiple years in the middle of his Mets career after his second pro season. Then he had 2 relatively healthy seasons to end his Mets tenure, and they didn't want to sign him to a long-term deal because they didn't think that he was going to be a workhorse. He was going to be able to throw that, a huge number of innings. And Wheeler his first year in Philly was the COVID year, and obviously we know that was a shortened season. But since then, he's thrown over 192 innings in 3 of the 4 years. And he's thrown over 192 innings in 4 of the last 5 full seasons. And I think that would have shocked a lot of people in 2017, 2018, or whatever. So, we've started to see that a little bit with Pablo Lopez. Oh, he's an injury-prone guy when he was in Miami. He's not going to be durable. That has started to change. So it's just my way of reminding you that it doesn't always have to be that way. One season maybe isn't enough to just say, oh, this guy's injury concerns are gone. But injury durability concerns can be waylaid as pitchers get older and they change things about their mechanics or their body type or their routine or whatever. So just early career narratives can shift. Make sure we shift with them.
Absolutely. And the next guy really isn't a injury prone guy at all. We haven't seen it.
Well, some people want to argue that he could be this year.
What do you want to argue, guys? Okay, which do you want? Do you want the ones who have gotten a lot of workload, so thus they are due, or do you want the ones who have been hurt but now they are healthy? We can't win. There's no way for us to really understand it, which is honestly why you're going to see in my rankings that I'm more aggressive, I think, on injured guys than others, but maybe I'm not. We'll see. But it's Corbin Burnes. Mm-hmm. And I know some people want some guy named Logan over here, but Corbin Burnes to me is so underrated still. His worst season in 5 years is a 3.39 ERA with every other season underneath a 3 ERA. What? His WHIP last year was 110, which is the worst of his career since 2019, when he was still figuring out what is going on. 2020 is when he actually showed up. Yes, his strikeout rate fell to 23%. And that is really the biggest pushback you're going to see. And that makes all the sense because, that was worrisome and not the guy that we know. Thing is, Corbin Burnes did 2 things that I liked last year. One, his slider was utilized more against right-handers, and that is a 26% swing strike rate pitcher, something ridiculous. To right-handers always has. It's been an effective pitch for him. It's just things are great. Okay, it's actually 27%. Oh, cool, awesome. The second thing is that by the end of the year, at the end of August, he changed his cutter finally. And this is the thing that I've been watching Corbin Burnes and been waiting for him to get back is the cutter. The vertical break on it was lessened. And that not just meant that it wasn't missing as many bats. It was also where it was landing was worse. He was essentially doing the same thing, but then instead of it landing down, it was landing middle and became much more hittable and just not the foundation that he needed it to be. So Corbin Burnes actually added the vertical break back and then some and had a much better end of the season. That cutter was missing bats at near 15% swing strike rate all of a sudden after being around an 8-9% previously. He all of a sudden went from about a 42% low location to about 55% all of a sudden. This was a much, much better cutter. And with that foundation, I am so ready to jump in here. Not to mention, even with that 23% K rate, that's still a great season. I mean, yes, 180 strikeouts, not 200 plus or so, but 292 ERA, 110 WHIP. Made 32 starts, so it was a 15-win season, which honestly, he's going to the Diamondbacks, and that's a great situation. That was the number 2 defense, and now it's above average last year. It's notoriously been a great defense. It's what's helped Merrill Kelly and Zach Gallen as well.
Slight downgrade at first with Walker leaving, but obviously if you're going to downgrade at any position in the infield, that's the position 100%. To downgrade at.
And so I feel as if this is a great scenario for Burnes. They're not going to underpitch him. If anything, they're going to overpitch him, which is what you want, right? They're going to let him have a good long leash as they traditionally do in Arizona. I'm a fan of this. I feel, again, as I'm looking at my top 5, my first tier, who are the ones that are just stable and give you everything? And I would be shocked if we saw a 23% strikeout rate again from Corbin Burnes this year. I would expect it to be closer to 26, 27. And that is right in line with Zack Wheeler. It would make you incredibly happy as a fantasy manager.